Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti. I am MrPhotographer.com. Today I'm going to teach you how to create a slideshow in Lightroom. Now there's a lot to cover, so we're going to jump into it right away. First of all, you got to decide what images you want in your slideshow. Today I'm going to make a slideshow of all the different primate images I've taken over the last few years. So what I need to do to begin with is put all these images in a collection all by themselves. And you can see over here on the left-hand side, I have a collection. I called it Primates, and I have 26 images in this collection. Once you have the images in the collection, next what you're going to need to do is put them in the order you want them to appear in the slideshow. Meaning, this first one on the far left will appear first, this one second, and so on. And I could reorder them by just clicking on one and dragging it to the position in the film strip where I want it to appear in the slideshow. So once you have these images in the order you want them in, now go over to the slideshow module. And when you do that, over on the right hand side, there's a lot of different controls, and we're going to be going over all these. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to close down the left panel just to give us a little more room, and I'm going to make the film strip considerably smaller just so we could better see what we're doing. Now on the right hand side, over at the very top, you can see it has zoom to fill frame. Right now I have images down here in the film strip. Some are vertical, some are horizontal, some are square, some have maybe odd crops to them. And right now they'll show up in the film strip the way I have them cropped. But if I want to try to keep them more the same like size, if I click zoom to fill frame, it'll zoom everything in to try to film the frame as much as possible. But what it will do, it's going to just kind of arbitrarily crop your image, and you may not want that. So you can see if I unclick that box, there's my image the way I want it. There's zoom to frame. So I'm not going to click that box. Do you want a white or colored border around your image? If I click, you can see right now it's putting a border around there. I could change the color, up in here. I could, make it a white, like something like that, like a white border if I want, or any color I want. You could change the width of the border with this slider here. I don't want any border on my image, so I'm going to keep that off. Do you want your image to cast a shadow? You could see that it looks like my image is more in a 3D situation because there's a shadow being cast to the lower right-hand side of the image. You control that shadow too. You could make it very opaque so it's darker or lighter, or somewhere in between. Also, the offset, how far away from the image do you want it to be cast with that offset slider there. The radius is basically the blur of the slider. If you go to or blur of the shadow, I'm sorry. So if I go to the far right, you can see it's blurred quite a bit. But if I go to the far left, you can see it's much more defined. So I'll keep it more in the middle. And, what angle do you want it to be cast at? Right now I have it to the lower right, so it's as though the light source is at the upper left. You could change that with this slider. You could just move it around and have that shadow wherever you want it. You also could grab this little wheel if you prefer to do it that way and move it around that way. But I'm going to leave it the way I had it. I kind of like that. And maybe not like that. Yeah. Pretty much like that. I think I'll make it just a little more blurred and like that. So I like the shadow. Now I have guides up. If you don't want to see those guides, just click that checkbox. Now the guides, even if you have them on like I do right now, they're not going to show up in the final slideshow. They're just there to show you, or to give you some idea of how the layout will be. The images will all be in the middle box of the guides, and you'll see later on I'll put text or something up there, and I could have the text, let's say, on the outer side of the guides, like up above or below or something like that. You could change the size of the guides if you just want to grab a slider and move them around. You could change from left, right, top, bottom. If you link them all by clicking that box right there, you can see then I could make those guides a lot bigger, smaller, move things around. Like that. See how it's making the image very small that way, but you could do it as you want. Now, if you don't have that, if you don't have this link all checked, you do a single slider, let's say, and you could then offset the image to the side. You do that, let's say, if you want to, you're going to have text consistently on one side, let's say. You may want to do that. So we're going to link them all, and we're going to make them a little smaller. Something like that. All right, so that looks good. So those are guides. Now, right now we're reviewing it in the aspect ratio that my computer screen is. My computer screen is a 16:9 aspect ratio, and that's what we're seeing. You can see in this drop-down right here, it's saying screen. Now, if you have a laptop or a MacBook or something like that, most often those aspect ratios aren't in the 16:9 aspect ratio, and you may want to force it into that. What you could do is go to this drop-down and you do 16:9. You could see it didn't change because that is the aspect ratio of my iMac. But if I go to that drop-down, maybe I want the old NTSC, old TV 4:3, you could do that as well. But I'm just going to keep it as screen. So my slideshow is going to be in a 16:9 aspect ratio because that is what my screen is. Identity plates are something that you may want to set up before you start to create your slideshow, but you could do them on the run as well. For instance, I'll click this button here, and you can see down at the bottom I have some text. I mentioned that's why you may want these guides up here that help you maybe place your text where you want it. Right now I have Photography by Anthony Morganti. That's called an identity plate. If I click this little arrow that's in the lower right-hand corner, you can see that I have one that's called Presentation Series. It says Anthony Morganti Presentation Series. That's one I called my lousy IP for identity plate. That's the one we just saw. There's also one that's my logo that I actually use at the bottom of each of the panels on the left and right hand side. So you could see that those are there as well. Let's go back to identity plate for a minute. And finally, if I go back to my lousy identity plate, I could edit it by clicking that little arrow, go to edit. And this box will pop up and I could change what I worded or how I worded things. I could change the color, I could change the font, I could do all that right there. Also then below that, I see I have override color checked. You may have noticed when I looked at this that the actual name is in blue, but it's showing up in gray. That's because I overrode the color. If I click that box, you can see the colors will come through. I could also change the colors by clicking right here and then picking a color in the color picker. You could lower the opacity so it's barely shown or increase the opacity. You could also make it larger or smaller. You also could move it around, just go right on it, click on it and drag it. I could drag it up to the top, to the side, wherever I want to put it, I could put it. Now in this case, I'm not going to use this, so I'm going to keep that off. Now I don't use watermarks, but if I did, I could click here and I could choose a watermark. I don't have any, and I would have a watermark on the images as they go through, the slideshow, but I don't use that. And that would be similar to the identity plate, the way it would work, but I'm not doing that. Now the rating and stars for each image that you actually use in Lightroom, you could have those show up as well. If I click this box, you can see that there's a 1 star over here in the top left-hand corner. If I go on the next image, you can see there's 5 stars and so on. You could change again the opacity of those stars with that slider. The scale of the stars, you can make them smaller, you can make them larger. You could also change the color or shading of those stars by clicking on that little color swatch. So you could change color, make them different colors if you want, or just keep them specifically by default, whatever they are. Now I'm not going to show those, so I'm going to turn those off. Text overlays, if I click on that, you could see that it's saying Japanese macaque down here at the bottom. If I go on the previous one, it's the Bornean orangutan. That is actually the title that I manually put in the metadata of the images. So if I want that to show what type of animal this is, I could just keep this box checked. And if I then, you'll see everything's grayed out below it. What you need to do is like click right on it so it's active. Then you could change the opacity of it. You could change the font and the face of the font. If it's available in different faces, you could do that. So you could change the font. Also, you could click this box and have it cast a shadow. You really can't see it very well, but it's similar to the shadow that is being cast by my image. You could do the same thing. It has the same controls, opacity, offset, radius, and the angle. So you could do that all as well. So all that is this text. And again, you could take that text and you could put it anywhere you want on the image. In this case, I'll just leave it on the bottom, but I'm actually not going to use it. I'll keep it turned off. Below that is the backdrop. That's actually the area behind the image. Right now I'm using a color wash. You can see it's just this graduated gray. It's brighter in the top left-hand corner, darker in the bottom right. That kind of matches the shadow that I applied to the image itself. But you could change all that here. First of all, the opacity itself. You can see you can make it lighter or darker. If I turn it off altogether, it's going to be black background. You could then change the color or shading of the graduation by clicking the little color swatch, and you could pick, something different. Let's say white, darker gray. You could pick a color even if you want color, something like that. I'll just stay with what it was. So you could change the color or the shade of gray that you're using, the opacity and the angle. Now it looks like it's brighter in the top left-hand corner, darker in the lower right. You could change that as you want. Now I'm going to leave it the way it was because that kind of matches the way the light for the shadow on the image. So I'll leave it like that, and I'm going to use that. You also could use a background image. If you turn that on, you would drag an image from the film strip to this little box, and then that image will be behind the main image. I'm not going to do that. You could also vary the opacity once you do that. We're not doing that at all. Background color, if you click on that, you could pick the actual color of the background, and I'm not going to use a colored background. I'll leave it at that. Now titles, these again use identity plates, something you may want to have set up before you started your slideshow, but you could do it on the fly. If I click the intro screen, at the very first frame that will show, you saw it said the statues of Forest Lawn Cemetery. That is actually the last slideshow I created. You may have saw it. It's a project I did where I photographed the statues at Forest Lawn Cemetery, and I created a slideshow and posted it on YouTube and my website and things. Now, obviously, I don't want this one to show the statues of Forest Lawn Cemetery, right? So what we're going to do is I'm just going to click this little triangle right here, and we're going to go down to Edit. And it comes out, and it's, the statues of Forest Lawn Cemetery. Well, I probably want this to say something different, right? So I'm going to say primates by, and then I'm going to put my name, but you'll see what will happen. All of a sudden, I can't see what I'm doing anymore because the font is too big. What you could do is hit Command or Control A to select them all. It's Command if you have a Mac, Control if you have a PC, and just go down to the size of the font and reduce it so you could see everything. This will help you see what you're doing. So I'm writing Primates by Anthony Morganti. I also could change the font itself, the color of the fonts, and so on. So I'm just going to leave it like that, select everything again, and we'll go back up to 48, and we'll click OK. Now you see Primates by Anthony Morganti. That's going to be the first frame that will show at the beginning. I could change the color by clicking here and change the color of the actual font as we come through. Kind of like it like that, I think. But you can make it colors too. It doesn't have to be gray. You could override the color that was similar to what I did earlier, where my actual identity plate, Anthony Morganti, was in blue, and I clicked that to override the color. In this case here, it's not a different color, so that doesn't matter. I could also change the size. As soon as I click on this slider, it will show it, and I could resize it to fit it the way I want. So that's fine. I like that, and I'll use that. That will be the first frame shown. Next will be an ending screen, and similar, same thing. I'm going to use just this, my name. I could then, change to something darker, maybe like that. Like that. I don't know. Something like that, I think. And I could change, again, my identity plate. Same thing. Click on this little triangle in the lower right-hand corner. Go to Edit, and I could change it to anything I want. Change the font, change the color, and so on. But we'll leave it right there and scale. Make it pretty big. So I'll use the end plate as well. So at the very last, after the last primate shows, which would be this young lady right here, then that will show that identity plate. Anthony Morganti will show. and the duration of music or the music itself. You don't have to add music, but you can add music as background theme to the slideshow as it's playing, and I'll do that. I just have some ambient music that is royalty free on my desktop. It's called Amber, and we'll add that. And you can see there it's 2 minutes and 30 seconds long. Now during playback, how long do you want your images to show? How long do you want the fades between images to be? And do you want it to sync with the music? If you sync the slides to the music, what Lightroom will try to do, it will analyze the music and try to sync the switching from image to image to kind of the beats in the music and changes in the music. That doesn't always work very well. You could try it and hopefully it will work out for you, but from what I found, it usually doesn't work very well. You also could just manually adjust the slide length so that, let's say, each slide is on the screen for 5.1 seconds, but it's going to fade from image to image, and it's going to take 1.3 seconds to fade from image to image. Or what you could do is fit it to the music, because if you just leave it like this, if your music isn't long enough for all the slides that you plan to show, it will just restart your music from the beginning. So what you could do is you could make this so that it fits this 2 minute and 30 second slideshow by just clicking right here, Fit to Music. Now the music will play once and the last slide will show right at the end of the music. So that's what I like to do. I prefer to do that. Now audio balance, do you want it balanced like the music is more important, more to the right? Or the video is more important, more to the left? Do you want to pan and zoom? This is kind of gives you that effect where it will zoom in slowly on an image as it's showing it, or pan a little bit left to right or something like that. I like that. It adds just a little more interest, I think, to the slideshow. So I'll leave it like that. But how much do you want it to pan? It could get annoying if it's panning too much, too great a distance, or it's zooming too great of a distance. So you could control that with this slider here. I'm going to leave it more towards the low end. So it's going to be more of a subtle pan and a subtle zoom. Then when the slideshow is done, do you want it to be repeated? Click there. And do you want the images to show in random order? And I don't want it to do that. I have them placed in a very specific order. Now, quality, draft, standard, high. This is for the preview. Let's go with draft. That will be faster when I click preview. Now you have preview and play. Preview will leave Lightroom open, and it's going to preview the slideshow right here in the middle of the screen. If you click play, what it will do is after it renders the slideshow, it's going to not close, but it will minimize Lightroom and show your slideshow all by itself. So let's do preview first, and it takes a second, and this is where the quality comes in. Since I chose draft, it's going to take less time to prepare the preview. It's still going to take quite a long time, but it will take less time. So what I'll do is I'll pause the video when we get towards the end here, and then you'll see it start to play in the middle of the screen. Okay, it's starting to play right now. You can see the music is playing. It's saying Primates by Anthony Morganti. Now you can see on this one, it's zooming in very slowly. This one's zooming out very slowly. Kind of a zoom and pan at the same time, I think, on this one. I probably could have chose better music, I know, but I was kind of in a hurry and I just chose some ambient music that I thought wasn't very obnoxious. So it's going through the images, and I'm not going to make you watch the entire thing, but you get the idea that that's how that works. Hit the space bar to pause, hit the space bar to play again, and when you're done, just hit the click your left mouse button and you could stop the playback totally. So that is preview. Now I mentioned it, that was in the middle of the actual Lightroom. If I hit play, it would have played, would have like minimized Lightroom, and it would have been the only thing on the screen, and it would have been larger, just showing me the entire the entire slideshow without Lightroom being in the way. And again, the quality, draft, standard, or high, that really has to do with how fast it's going to create those previews, either the regular preview or play. But this really doesn't save the slideshow as a video format for you to share with your friends and family. Now, what you need to do for that is go over here on the left-hand panel, and we'll open that up. And then down here at the lower left-hand side, you see you have two choices, export PDF or export video. If you export PDF, what it will do is just create a PDF of every image on its own page of the PDF. I'm not going to do that, but if there's, for some reason you need to create a PDF of images, that's how you do it. You go to the slideshow module to do it. But I'm going to export the video. So we'll click on that. And you'll see that once that spinning wheel is done, it's going to ask us to name it and save it somewhere. So I'm going to just name it Primates. And down here, the video preset, 720p, 1080p. Let's go with a full 1080p right there. So it's in a 16:9 ratio. That's how we created the slideshow. And we're going to click export. So now Lightroom's going to actually create this slideshow as a video. And what I'll do is I'll pause the video and we'll come back to it when it's all done, and I'll show it to you. All right, it just finished exporting the video. I'll minimize Lightroom, and you can see it's on my desktop right here. And I'll double click it and play it, and you can see it starts out with that Primates by Anthony Morganti, and then goes to each of the images in turn with that kind of creepy ambient music playing in the background. And what I'll do is I'll skip towards the end, and you'll see that end screen pop up, and that's it. That is the slideshow created. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. We'll go back to Lightroom. You notice in the top left hand corner it says it's an unsaved slideshow. Well, I could save it. We'll create a saved slideshow right here, and I'll just call it my Primate slideshow. And we're going to save it inside of the Primates collection over here on the left. You have the choice of which collection to save it in, but I'm going to save it in that one. Now you could make new virtual copies. The advantage of using virtual copies is that if you're in the folder of the image, let's say, and you're on the original image and you modify it, you change the crop or you change the processing of it, it will reflect that in the slideshow later on. If you export the slideshow again or play the slideshow, it will reflect those changes. If you don't want it to reflect those changes, you could create virtual copies so that the virtual copy will be pristine the way you have it, and you could modify the virtual copy if you want to, but that's the advantage of doing that. Set as target collection, that's not needed. That's if you want to add images to it easily. You could hit the B key on your key when you're on an image you want to add to the slideshow, and it will automatically get added. And you could sync it with Lightroom. That's Lightroom Mobile. If you want it to sync, you could click there. And I'm just going to click Create. So now you'll notice over here in the Primates catalog, or collection, I'm sorry, it has the Primate slideshow. So there it is right there, and it's now saved. It says over here in the top left-hand corner. So I could come and revisit this anytime I want, change any settings, add images to it, whatever I want, it's right there. So that's how you create and use a slideshow in Lightroom. Thank you, everyone who watches my videos. I really do appreciate it. I'll talk to you guys soon.